Our top story: after two Israeli embassy staffers were brazenly shot here outside the Jewish Museum in Washington, the U.S. Justice Department on Thursday charged the lone suspect with 2 counts of first-degree murder as well as murder of a foreign officials. Now, the Justice Department has called the killings a targeted act of terrorism. So let's take a look more about what we exactly know as far as the couple go. Who exactly were they? Aaron Luchinsky is an Israeli American citizen. He was 30 years old. Sarah, his partner, was 26 years old. They were both going to be engaged in the next week or so. In fact, Aaron had bought Sarah a ring, and when they walked out from this Jewish museum on Wednesday night, that's when they were shot at. Now, we also need to tell you about how things actually unfolded that day. The suspect that we were telling you about, Ayelet Rodriguez, what exactly did he do? Well, he actually bought a ticket to an event at this museum that was to happen on Wednesday night. He bought that ticket just about 3 hours before that event could begin, and it was here that he paced back and forth on the street before seeing a group of 4 people. He then opened fire on 2 of them, Aaron and Sarah, and they were the ones who were killed. He fired multiple bullets against them or on them. Let's get you more on this story. We are now joined by Sarah's friend, Ayelet Razin. She joins us now from Israel with more.
Hello.
Ayelet, if you can hear me here, firstly, so sorry for your loss. A terrible tragedy here. Can you tell us a little bit more about Sarah? What was she like? You've worked with her, you were friends with her. Tell us a little bit more of the kind of individual, the person she was.
Well, I met Sarah. She was my colleague first and foremost. I'm a lawyer and I work on, ever since the October 7th terror attack, I've been collecting the evidence in regard to the conflict-related sexual violence that occurred that day and in captive. And Sarah was my counterpart in the embassy. She was the one who was dedicated to bringing these voices, these testimonies that I have gathered to stakeholders, to lawmakers in U.S. government, Senate, State Department, and all that. So that's how I met her. I spent many hours with her. She was an enlightened person. You can see
Well,
in the pictures. Um, and
when was the last time you spoke to her? Did she tell you about this potential engagement that may have been in the works next week?
No, and I have to say that from what I understand, she didn't know about the engagement either. He bought a ring, he didn't yet propose. So it's, another level of tragedy here. No, I wasn't aware that they were to be engaged.
Indeed. Indeed, very, very hard here. Elliot, what about this whole incident? Of course, extremely shocking, very tragic. What is it that disturbs you most about what happened? Are you scared for other friends and colleagues that are here in the United States from being targeted as well?
Yes, what is infuriating with this incident that it was no surprise. And I'll go further and say that the next anti-Semitic murder is also shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. It's just around the corner. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. This is a peak of a long, very, very violent, very, very, a threatening series of events and protests and expressions and actions of violence in the United States, but not only, all over the world, where the spilling of blood of Jewish people, of Israeli people, is something that has been normalized, has been there's no, in the name of a politically correct and the different freedoms of rights and protests, violent expressions and violent actions are being standardized. And so we shouldn't be
Right.
surprised by this next level of violence that has been taken the life of my friend and her partner.
Once again, very sorry for your loss. That was Elliot. She's joining us from Israel. She is the friend of one of the deceased, the victim, Sarah Milgram. Let's move on now. Let's now take a look at how this again unfolded in terms of the specifics as far as the weapon that was used. Rodriguez, who has been arrested, flew into D.C. from Chicago with the very gun he used, and the couple, he legally owned that gun, a 9mm pistol. Now, earlier in the week, Rodriguez carried the gun on the flight from Chicago, where he came from, to D.C. in his check-in luggage, declaring it with the necessary paperwork. There has been widespread condemnation to the attack. Let's listen in to some of those voices now.
Yaron and Sarah weren't the victims of a random crime. The terrorists who cruelly gunned them down did so for one reason and one reason alone. He wanted to kill Jews. And as he was taken away, he chanted, "Free Palestine." This is exactly the same chant we heard on October 7th. I say to President Macron, Prime Minister Carney, and Prime Minister Starmer, when mass murderers, rapists, baby killers, and kidnappers thank you, you're on the wrong side of justice.
The evil of anti-Semitism must be eradicated from our society. I spoke to the Attorney General this morning. The Department of Justice will be prosecuting the perpetrator responsible for this to the fullest extent of the law. Hatred has no place in the United States of America under President Donald Trump.
The president and the attorney general have both indicated that, in cases where the death penalty is warranted and seems appropriate, we will use it. It's far too early to say whether that is the case, but this is a death penalty eligible case.
We're now joined by former FBI Special Agent Kenneth Gray. He has decades of experience in national security investigations. Gray is currently a criminal justice lecturer at the University of New Haven. Kenneth, thank you so much for your time here on Washington Watch. What, according to you, is one of the most disturbing parts about how the suspect, Elias Rodriguez, operated?
Good to be with you, Allister. So I think the fact that this was such a banal attack, that is the banality of this, that Rodriguez did not know either one of these victims. He was just looking for Jews to shoot. He crossed the crosswalk behind you, went past them, turned around, and shot them from behind, and then waited there. He dumped his backpack and weapon, and then went to the museum and waited and turned himself into police. And so this was an act that he wanted it known that he was doing this act, and he was doing it for Palestine. He wanted to make it known that he was doing this because he wanted to be able to say "Free Palestine" after this occurred.
Right, Kenneth, now the shooting is being investigated as a hate crime. Officials saying that more charges could be coming, including that of terrorism. Given what you've seen so far, would there be a strong case for those terrorism charges to be laid?
So I think they could very easily make a case that this is a terrorist act. He's carrying this out in furtherance of an ideological or political motivation. And so you could make this case that it's terrorism, but these type of cases are often pursued as hate crimes instead.
Right, there is CCTV footage that was outside the museum here, and that CCTV evidence shows that how the suspect actually operated. My question here is, how watertight is this case, given that we have all this footage, all this evidence of it happening and being recorded on closed-circuit camera?
Well, you've got all the elements of the crime. You have the weapon. You have this statement by the shooter himself saying that he did the shooting. You have the forensic evidence, and you have eyewitnesses that saw this occur. And you have the recording. So with all that put together, this is a very, very tight case that should be easy to prosecute. We will see whether or not they will move towards the death penalty in this particular case.
Do you see a scenario, very quickly here, very few seconds with you, Kenneth, do you see a scenario where Rodriguez's lawyers perhaps say that he was not in sound mind?
They certainly could make that statement. He has a history of being an activist, a left activist, and so this is in keeping with that left activist type mentality. But nonetheless, they will probably try to fall back on that as to an excuse for him carrying this out.
Kenneth Gray, former FBI agent, thank you very much indeed for your time here on Washington Watch.